Hi everyone, it's Ileana, and I have a last minute Christmas card to share with you today. As you know, sometimes the holidays get a little hectic, and sometimes there's a person that we may have overlooked. So it's nice to have a gift card ready, just to have on hand. And so here's a quick card that you could make in order to put that gift card in. I am taking the Trim the Tree die from Concord and Ninth, and I'm die cutting it out of some green pattern paper from the Nitpicky collection from Fawn. I can run it through my die cut machine twice if I just am careful about where I place this die, so you can always just make a spare. This year I was kind of determined to use as much pattern paper as I can. My stash of pattern paper has been kind of growing and I just haven't been using as much, so I made an effort to use as much pattern paper this year on my Christmas cards. Now I'm taking the Stitched Mountains from Lawn Fawn and I'm just using a scrap piece of brown scrapbooking paper. I'm going to go ahead and run this through there twice, and I'm just putting the mountain as far over to the left as possible, and then that way I can just trim down my card front from this one long piece. If you want, you can probably create a nice scrapbooking border with this die. And now I'm just going to take the little snow caps, and I'm just using a scrap piece of glittered cardstock. If you don't have glittered cardstock, you can probably just make your own with some embossing ink and some glitter embossing powder. Or you can just take a white piece of cardstock and use maybe some Winkastella to just add a little bit of sparkle to your mountaintop. I'm also taking the Lawn Fawn Stitched Hillsides with another scrap, and I'm just going to cut along the edges, wanting to make sure that the stitched part is on the correct side of the paper. And I'm just going to flip the paper over. What I'm thinking about doing is just lining this up and then trimming it down, right down the middle, so that I could get two cards out of this. And now I'm just going to take the gift card die from Lawn Fawn, and I'm just placing it inside of my card. I am layering it between a sheet of typing paper, and the reason why I'm doing this is because if you don't do that, then the back of your cardstock will get all yucky from your cutting plates. And now I'm just taking a piece of Let's Bokeh paper, and this is an old, it's an older pattern paper from Lawn Fawn. It's no longer available, but you can just substitute it for any kind of blue paper. And I did trim it down to 4 1/4, and then I just cut it down the middle, so it measures 4 1/4 by 3. Now I'm taking the negative piece of my pattern paper from when I cut out the tree, and I'm just lining up my stamp, and it's also from the Trim the Tree collection from Concord and Ninth. So I'm just lining everything up inside of that negative piece. That way I could just stamp the inside, just stamp the sentiment on the Christmas tree. And I did remember to use my embossing bag to get rid of any static that was on my pattern paper. So I'm just taking some white embossing powder. I don't have a white sparkle, so I'm just using the white for now, and then I'll go back and I'll add some sparkle to my sentiment. I'm just going to heat set this with my heat gun, and you want to be careful that you get any strays off with a dry brush. Otherwise you're going to have these little white specks all over the place. And you do need to keep your heat gun moving, because if you leave it in one spot too long, you'll burn your embossing powder. So now I am putting this back inside of the MISTI, and I'm just trying to line it up as best I can because the paper does get a little bit warped when you heat set it. And I'm just putting some of my Brutus Monroe embossing ink. I like this ink because it stays wet until you put something over it. It doesn't dry until you put your embossing powder on top. So I went ahead and added some of the embossing ink, and now I'm using the Judikins Iridescent Sparkle just so that it matches the white sparkle paper I put on the on the mountaintops and on the snowdrift. So now I'm going to assemble my card, and I'm just adding on my snow, and you'll notice that it doesn't reach all the way down, so I'm just covering it up with the mountains, and it doesn't matter if the center part isn't covered because the tree will go over it. And it doesn't matter that it doesn't go all the way down to the bottom because the snowdrift will cover it up too. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and add my snowdrift, and I'm trying to see how much snow I want on the bottom. And now that I have that figured out, I'm going to go ahead and adhere that on. And then I'm trimming the lengthwise part first because if I trim it across the sides, then it may not work out for the second card. So now that everything is trimmed together, I am going to go ahead and add on my Christmas tree, and I added a layer of foam tape to the back. And this is where I remembered I didn't put my snow caps on. So I'm just using some liquid adhesive, and it does take a little bit for it to dry. So you want to be careful that while you're positioning your Christmas tree that you don't move the snow caps. And so now I can go ahead and add my tree. And then I realized that I didn't die cut the stars, so I used the stars from the Trim the Tree set. And I'm just taking the end of my bone folder, and I'm trying to smooth out that little dot that's in the middle of the star. It's from the poke hole that's in your die. They put little poke holes in there so that when you cut something with your die, it's easy for you to pop it out. And I wanted to add a little bit of color, so I'm using a Sakura Jelly Roll metallic red pen, and I'm just going to color in where the little design is on the word jolly. And that completes the card. And I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas tomorrow, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Have a great day. Merry Christmas.